What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about mental health. Yes, I said it. I meant it. It is necessary to talk about to kind of solve some of the issues that we're facing in society, but also to just be better as human beings. How great would it be if we all worked a little bit on ourselves every day to be better husbands, wives, friends, children, and parents as well, especially the parents. A lot of times we pass on generational issues, and I think that we can work together to get rid of those, not sweeping things under the rug, understanding when your son or daughter is going through a tough time, being a receptive child and learning from your parents, in even the lessons they taught you in the past. All these things can help us become better, but the best way to learn is from people who we barely even know. So we're going to touch on that today and dive into the life of my boy Zach Belknap down in Oregon. I love the things he's doing. I cannot wait for you to listen to this and receive some of the lessons that he's going to share. He's doing great work helping others find how to love themselves better. And I think that self-love is self-discipline. Self-discipline is self-love. And today we're going to just dive into mental health, um, ingesting good stuff, spiritual, mental, and emotional fitness, and talk about some plant medicine. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Are you thinking about making a podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one, and if I can figure it out, you definitely can too. You can create your own content all in one place for free with zero hangups and even earn money as soon as you get started. Spotify lets you record and edit episodes from your phone or computer so you can go mobile, just like I enjoy to do. My favorite thing about it is that you can create video episodes if you wish and upload them to wherever podcasts are heard. You can even set up subscriptions, or if you're like me, listener support options for listeners to help you grow. I 10 out of 10 recommend the Spotify for Podcasters app. Or, why don't you just step over to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your own podcast. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Eddie, and today I'm joined once again by the legend, the man, the myth, the Smith & Wesson, the vegan Victor, as I would call him, someone who embodies caring about the world, nature, and everyone else around him, and it shows in all that he does. So I'm so thankful to have him. Thank you so much for joining us today, Zach.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Excellent. So let's jump straight into your mental health journey, because everybody has different moments where life hits you, or where emotions bubble up, or you have a traumatic experience and it surfaces later, because 7 to 12 years after men experience traumatic experiences, it usually surfaces, especially in veterans that have to deal with combat. So where did your journey begin? Where did it first start for you?
The beginning is like really far back. I guess it's really more like the beginning of my life. So I guess I'll just tell this like chronologically, is the things that I've learned through my journey, but starting back with my childhood. My parents divorced when I was like 1.5 or 2 years old, something like that. And everything, like, they got along, they had like an agreement, nothing, they didn't have to like go to court or anything like that. And they had this split custody agreement, and I was to live with my mom until I was 12, and then after that I would live with my dad, with just like visits in between. And I guess that was kind of like the best option, like psychologically, like be with like the mother during the more like nurturing needs years, and then with the father during like the pubescent years and all that. So anyway, what ended up happening is my dad moved out of state, and like what I wanted as a child, like I just wanted to be with both my parents, and so I wanted to be with my dad, and he wasn't there, because he moved. And it, like, I still got to see him and all that. And I have to like preface this by saying both my parents are fantastic parents, so much so that they married other people that were also fantastic parents, and I have four really great people in my life. I know they're going to listen to this, and so I want them to know, like I love you guys very much,
Absolutely.
and don't like hold any grudges or anything like that. But what that registered as in my little mind was abandonment.
Mm.
I wanted my dad, and he wasn't there, and it felt like abandonment. And then on top of that, after a time, I started realizing the more that I expressed my desire to be with my dad, the more it was having like a negative effect on my mom. Um, and it created this sort of um, it made it seem like I was hurting other people by expressing my emotions. So that was sort of like the first step in creating the version of myself that I was to become. Um, and I just kind of like fell victim to society and like toxic masculinity basically over the years, um, learning that, being vulnerable was something that was like weak and opened you up to being like made fun of and teased, and just like learning to really buckle down and stuff all the pain and sadness inside,
And
and
that's
I
completely the
learned that
polar
really, really
opposite
well. um,
of what we need as a society. That's definitely
of what we
not what
need,
we need.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I talked to my dad about this years later, where he said he was just watching it happen. um, Eventually, like the pain of having to go back and forth and all that just became too much, and I just started to like kind of turn off. um, and I had this memory surface over the last year or so, from when I was a teenager, and I had just watched a movie with my dad and my stepmom, and they asked me what I thought of the movie, and I was like, it was fine. And they were like, no, but like, what did it make you feel? How do you feel about the movie? And I was so offended by that question. Was like, what the fuck do you mean? How did I feel? Like, I don't know how I feel. Like, oh, I just immediately like just got uncomfortable and angry. And I realize now that they were like seeing me build these walls up around myself and lose touch with myself. And they were like throwing out a lifeline, like trying to help me and pull me out of this like fucking like prison that I was building myself into, and I just completely rejected it. Um, yeah. So anyway, um, life continued, and I had been in like several relationships that just kind of like always failed, and um, I finally became aware of like a repeating pattern, um, which was my partners wanting more from me than I was comfortable giving. And I had to like finally realize that I was the common denominator. Like think what I thought was sort of healthy in relationships was like, I knew what codependence was, but at that time in that stage of my life, I was thinking that intimacy was codependence. And so I wanted just like a lot of distance and separation. I was holding everybody in my life that I was close to like at arm's length.
Self-isolation.
And this like final break, yeah, totally. Because if I don't let you in, then you can't hurt me. Um, and so yeah, that this last breakup, I kind of realized, like I saw the pain um, that I had caused, and realized that it was like on me. And um, it was just the perfect timing. It was right then when I was like realizing all this shit, and that like I needed to do some work on myself, some self discovery, and some growth, and all of that. My coach, um, who was someone that I was really good friends with, and she was also like a client of mine at the gym. She was telling me about like her this new certification she had got. Um, as a psychedelic integration coach. And as she's telling me about what this work entails, it was like I was struck by a bolt of lightning. Like it was the first time I think in my entire life where I knew with 100% certainty and clarity, this is the path that I need to go down. Like I have to do this. And we got started right away. Um, we met like once a week. First of all, it had nothing to do with psychedelics for like 12 weeks. Like we just met and talked for like an hour. And um, the sort of like the priority was just get me emotionally literate. Like try to bring me from like a kindergarten level of emotional intellect to like just a little bit above that, honestly. Just to the point where I'm like capable of recognizing my own emotions, talking about them with other people. I mean, the first thing was the vocabulary, the emotional vocabulary. She showed me the emotion wheel, and it was like this huge eye-opening experience for me. I was like, oh my God, like I know that I've felt a range of emotions, but having the vocabulary to actually say it like changes everything. Um, there's this book by Brene Brown called Atlas of the Heart, and in the intro to the book, she talks about how if you had a shoulder injury and it was like you're in excruciating pain, but your hands were tied behind your back and there was duct tape over your mouth, and you were trying to tell a doctor what was going on, you wouldn't be able to communicate to the doctor what was happening, and you'd end up like one of two things would happen. You would just like give up and be like a crying heap on the floor, or you'd go into a fit of rage and like destroy the everything in the room. um and that was that when I read that, I just resonated so hard with it because that was where I was at in my life. That's why I was so angry when my dad and stepmom asked me how I felt about that movie. It was because I didn't have the vocabulary to describe what I was feeling, and it just like default just goes to rage because I didn't have the ability to communicate those things. So um, yeah, I learned a lot about just what emotions exist and how they feel in my body, and then how to bring that up to people. And that's definitely still an area of work that I'm learning a lot in, is like communication skills and how to like talk with people um, when you're like feeling triggered, or rather that it's maybe best to wait until you've calmed down a little bit to talk about stuff that's upsetting you. And that's like a whole nother arena that I really want to dive into next. But um, yeah, once we kind of went over that, then we established like what my core values are, and just like through like a really simple exercise. There's like a deck of cards that are called like the core value cards, and you just basically pick out three that are really significant to you. And um, and she explained to me how when we act in ways that are out of alignment with our core values, we're creating suffering in ourselves, whether that's subconsciously or consciously. So if honesty is one of your core values and you say something that's not 100% honest, most likely it's going to eat you up inside. You're going to like think about it a lot and regret it. Or um, if it's not in your conscious mind, it's going to just manifest somehow in your body as like tension, or some anything really. So I mean, imagine like if you don't really know consciously what your core values are, then how are you going to behave in a way that's in alignment with those things? So that was also a huge um like a huge step, I guess. That changed everything for me because once I discovered what my core values were at that time, I was able to, I set 2 alarms on my phone just to remind me to think about it. Um, and then it was like, are my actions and my thoughts and my words aligning with these values? And it was like I had unlocked this new level of like happiness in my life. Like at that point, I just started picking up momentum as I was going down this path towards kind of like healing and growth. And um yeah, anyway, it just it made a huge difference, and it impacted my relationship with people, whether it was my clients, my family, my friends, whatever. I was That was always in the back of my mind, is like, is this conversation or this action or whatever in alignment? And um it was like taking handcuffs off.
I think
So yeah, that was go ahead, man. What were you gonna say?
I really admire that, man. I think being not self-conscious but self-aware is such a very, very powerful,
Yeah.
important thing to learn how to harness. It takes time. It takes asking yourself, was I being a douchebag, or am I being weak? And weakness isn't the having emotional outbursts. Weakness isn't having a bad day and telling somebody, hey, I'm hurting. Or weakness isn't losing a family member and saying, oh my God, I'm this really is crushing me. I don't know if I can even get through the day right now. Or calling a friend when you feel like hurting yourself or anything. That's not what
Yeah.
weakness is. Weakness is telling yourself that you can't feel these things because you're a guy, or telling yourself that you need to
Yeah.
behave a certain way because your skin color, putting yourself in a box that's unnecessary instead of opening up the boxes that we as human beings use to compartmentalize how we feel. It's very, very
Oh
dangerous
yeah.
to just box up how you feel about a divorce. Like I did it. I definitely did it in my childhood, boxing up how you feel about a divorce and shoving it in the attic and just forget, leaving it up there and forget about it. Right. Eventually, yeah, some rats might get in there.
Yeah.
You're going to forget what's in those boxes. There, when you
Mm-hmm.
finally go up there and open it up, you're going to have holes in it. It's going to be rotted. You have some rat
Mm.
poop, maybe. You never know what you're gonna find. And
Yeah, it's gonna come back.
or you're gonna see a picture and it's gonna break your heart because you're gonna ask yourself,
Mm-hmm.
what happened to this little kid? What happened to little Eddie in these pictures? And that's how I feel about pictures of myself as a child. When my mom drops off a box of them, like, hey, I brought you these, and I'm like, oh, I wasn't ready for these. I have like literally in this
Mm.
room, I have 6, 7 boxes of pictures from my childhood I haven't even gone through because I always ask myself, what happened to me? Compartmentalization and not being fluid and able to communicate my emotions happened.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And like you were saying, I really like that, actually, that metaphor or analogy or whatever. Because the longer you keep it in a box, the more it's gonna fester and it's gonna get putrid and so much worse than if you just had dealt with it in the moment. Um, just like anger or resentment, as you keep those things in, it's going to come out. And if you don't do it, like if you don't allow it to come out and do it with control, it's just going to be an explosion. Usually, in terms of resentment, it's going to be an explosion, like explosive argument, like a fit of rage with your partner or your friends or whatever. um, and yeah, you were talking about weakness, and weakness for me is like fear of confrontation, fear of like rocking the boat. And the weak thing is to stuff it down because, oh, I don't want to cause a fight or make someone else uncomfortable. The strong thing, the courageous thing is I need to tell this person how I'm feeling, even if it is painful or whatever, because like I want to be honest and truthful. Um, and the more you do that, the deeper your relationships get. It's so much more rewarding to do that. I actually, I'm in an incredible relationship right now, and we in the beginning we kind of played this game, and it was the what's the worst thing I could say right now game. Like, what is the worst thing I could tell you? And jokingly, it was kind of like I'm trying to scare you away from me by being so honest and so vulnerable. And every time we did that, it was like three layers deeper. Like we just got that much closer. And you know, it's like every time you're vulnerable with someone and they accept you, that bond just strengthens and becomes so much richer and deeper and more meaningful. So that's the fucking flex, man. Is
Definitely is.
vulnerability.
Vulnerability
Yeah.
is a major flex, and I think it's important that
Hmm.
we get comfortable being uncomfortable. It might suck to walk up to that bully as a child and say, "Hey, stop picking on this person," and they say, "Oh, what are you going to do about it?" And then they shove you, and then you punch them in the face. It might suck to have to deal with the principal at that age. It might suck to tell your parents, "I really don't like when you bullshit and lie. I need you to be an
Hmm.
example for me," because I think it might have been Jordan Peterson or some speaker who has a degree in psychology said that when we look at our parents and they're telling us as a child, you can be anything you want to be, shoot for the moon, and all these, you shoot for the stars, you can do it. That I ask myself as a child sometimes, well, how come my parents aren't shooting for the moon and they're telling me to?
Oh, wow.
Where when are they gonna quit the job that they complain about every day and go for it? When are they gonna articulate or to stop just articulating their dreams, their goals, their hopes, their aspirations for who they want to me to
Hmm.
become and start doing it for themselves? The second you
Hmm.
stop dreaming, the second you stop aspiring to be better, the second you are just working a 9 to 5, having kids and then dying, that's when we stop living. As soon as our dreams die, having a positive mental fortitude takes whole lot of things, but just a few, in my opinion, would really, really delve in. The first one is you already touched it, which is the foundation, being able to be comfortable about emotional health. That is a form of health. Being okay to say what you said hurt me and I'm not cool with it, or setting healthy boundaries. I'm not going to allow you to continue to talk to me like this, and standing on your ground. That is important. That's the foundation. And also saying, I'm having a bad day, or I'm sorry that I hurt you. Having emotional empathy, all these things that's tied in emotional health.
Hmm.
A mental health can be something as simple as making sure you're ingesting the right food. Same with physical health; they're all interchangeable. It's just having the right influences come into your body as well. So the foundation, making sure that you
Hmm.
have walls to protect the people on the inside of this house that we're building, to
Hmm.
stop the wind from coming in, stop blowing in the negativity. What positive things do you bring in? Do you spend all day watching Fox News and CNN? You might be a little bit jaded politically about stuff they're just putting out on mainstream media. You have to. Do
Hmm.
you even listen to independent journalists? Is something I usually ask people. But those are just the walls, how we protect ourselves. The
Hmm.
real part where all comes together is who is in that house with you. Are you comfortable with yourself? Because it's just you in your brain. Are you comfortable with
Hmm.
the decisions you've made? Are you
Hmm.
like spiritual fitness is what I call this one. Are you really okay if you died tomorrow? What dreams have you left unaccomplished? Why aren't you
Hmm.
chasing towards them right now? And that is really the three major contributors that I try to work on daily. It changes, obviously. Every day is different. Some might be more important than others, but those are the three major ones that really stand out to me when it comes to working on yourself, being better every day. I
Yeah,
want to be a
man.
great husband, but to do that, I have to love myself first. I have to love me enough to say I messed up. I made a mistake. I deserve to be seen as a true, honest person. Honey, I'm sorry I overstepped when I said that something that
Hmm.
was rude. I shouldn't have said that because I didn't mean. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to. You're my partner. I don't want to hurt you. So those are the three
Hmm.
practices that I spend daily, um, to find out what aligns with my core values. My core values, honestly, for me, they
Hmm.
change every day because I don't know. Maybe my mind just never stops moving.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No, that totally. It's very experiential. I've Mine have changed a couple times since I did that exercise for the first time, and um, it is crazy how the experiences in our life and what's important to us at that moment changes. Mine went from like sort of this direction of like personal autonomy and freedom and stuff to, after like having the journey I had, it's totally switching to becoming like healing focused, and like how can I be the best version of me, but also like give that gift, you know. And it's just, and I'm sure they've changed again since then. I've been meaning to do the exercise again, um but I love your three avenues for sure. And the consumption one is really, that's really alive in me right now. Is you know, obviously consuming healthy foods is a big part, but what's the media that you're consuming, and how, what's like the time, what are your conversations like with your friends? And lately I've been like, I love horror movies. I think they are so much fun, but that shit, it lives inside my brain. And I don't want that. Like I want to cultivate like a happy place. So lately I've just been watching stand-up comedy. That's just like, I want to start and end my day with laughter. And that's the kind of shit that if like random thoughts creep into my head, I don't want it to be like about this like disturbing horror flick that I watched, you know. I want it to be like that really funny thing that someone said. And you know, like conversations with friends, if people are constantly just like complaining or gossiping or whatever, like that has a weight. And what, yeah, you do not want, yeah, dude, you gotta cut that out.
Cut it
Like you
out.
don't want to hold that weight. Um, and I'm super guilty of that too. Like it's there's a weird perverse pleasure in complaining about shit that makes you upset, and then like hearing someone else agree with you or whatever. But
Validating
you
your
know,
emotions.
yeah, and it's okay to have a conscious rant, but when it's like unconscious and it's happening all the time, like that's not serving you and it's not serving the people you're talking to. um it's just really not doing any good, and it's like
Mm.
harmful, I think. So
100%.
yeah, being conscious of that is huge.
Habitually gossiping about other people, it stands out. There's one thing that a very, very wealthy man once said to me. If you spend so much of your time keeping up with the Kardashians, so much of your time, like I'll tap into Teen Mom 2 every now and then to learn some life lessons from people who make bad decisions regularly. But
Mhm.
you know, if you spend your time keeping up with Kardashians, diving into Jersey Shore, um, watching the Grizzlies that got busted for tax embezzlement or something like that. I bet tax fraud, I think it was. They're going to jail right now,
Mhm.
prison. If you keep up, spend all your time keeping up with these people who are quote unquote famous, you're gonna forget the most important person in your life, and it's you. You can't have a
Mhm.
healthy relationship with the person that you love this much if you don't work on yourself. And the more time
Yes.
you spend worrying about what other people got going on in their lives, their divorces, whose daddy walked out on their family and the struggle they're having. Oh my God, did you hear about the struggle that this person's having? Did you hear about this person who and the worst one for me is hearing people gossip about suicide, you know, throughout different industries, like the elevator industry. When my friend killed himself
Mhm.
last year, there were low lives who took the time out of the day to use it as a regular talking point. Oh, how do you think he did it? Do you hear about this? And these rumors circulate to me, and of course, on my reaction is not going to be a very positive one. So the more
No.
time people spend obsessing and fantasizing over other people's lives, it really shows that you have nothing going on that's worth it, or you don't value yourself at that point. That's enough to love yourself and
Mhm.
focus on yourself. Like I can look at you and
Mhm.
say, oh, if someone asked me who you were, I could say a bunch of things, but I would say the main things that you focus on, one, you take care of. It's apparent over 200 miles away is like the gap between you and me right now. So I can tell from a distance that you care about your relationships with yourself, with others, how you affect the world in general. You are very, very self-aware about the things you do daily to contribute. If you're not contributing to yourself and to your circle, and you're just obsessing over what someone else is doing, your garden will rot. Your garden will go to crap. You're gonna have dust in the corners of the house, and that applies to your life as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and I feel like it's a good sort of segue to bring me into like my next lesson that I want to share, and that was like the four levels of competence.
Mm.
Because a lot of like what we were just talking about is sort of like what your default is, the default consumption, the default conversations, your default attitude, all that. um So there's 4 levels of competence, and the first two are uncompetent, right? So the like sort of the lowest level, if you will, is unconscious incompetence. So basically, you have no idea how incompetent you are. You know, you're like just a baby wandering around, having no idea how your actions affect anything.
Jake Sully in
This
Avatar.
exactly, you were like a baby. That's
You're like a
exactly what I was
baby.
thinking. So yes, Jake Sully is unconsciously incompetent. And that was the state that I was in until I was 29 years old and realized I need to change something. Like I finally had that aha moment, that moment of clarity. Like, wow, it's me all along. It's been me. Um, and so the next phase then is conscious incompetence, which is like that's where I went. I realized the way I'm doing things is not working. It's not right. I need to change it. So you're aware of the fact that you might need help. Um, and then comes conscious competence, which for me, I think might be like the longest journey and maybe the most arduous and requires the most effort. It's where you're being competent, you're recognizing your patterns and you're interrupting those patterns, and you're taking steps to create a new default. That's what doing the work is that conscious competence phase. um, and then finally is unconscious competence, where your new default is the healthy pattern every time. You don't have to think about it anymore. You're just That's just like the new you, which I would, to me, that's like guru level enlightenment, you know. And one of the things that I've been learning is how nothing is linear. And this, I picked up a ton of momentum while I was working with my coach, and it was like, dude, I was going like 100 down the freeway, like nothing could stop me. I was just like learning and growing and learning and growing, and just like, oh my god, I'm so happy right now, and nothing's ever going to stop this. And that's not sustainable forever. Um, and eventually, you might have to feel something other than like super excited and happy. And I had moments where I started to feel the full spectrum of emotion again. And I felt sadness, and I felt despair, and I felt shame. Um, and then I would come back and be like, wow, I'm kind of in a different spot on my journey right now. Like, I feel like I might have taken a step back, and that's just what happens. And you have to kind of work um, to sort of regain what you lost. And a lot of that for me was like complacency. My biggest thing is like distraction. And so I'll throw on Netflix and just take my brain out of my head. And then before I know it, that becomes like an addiction. And I'm spending like, like hours every day just like watching some bullshit um, on Netflix.
Chasing the
And then I'm
dopamine.
like, wow. Well, yeah, yeah. And then I'm like, why don't I feel the way I felt like 3 months ago? And it's like, oh, well, I haven't been journaling, I haven't been meditating. Um, I haven't been like doing shadow work. I'm just like, whenever I feel a feeling, I'm like, oop, better turn on Netflix. And
That is
so,
very, very scary. That's a scary realization, because it happened to me very, very
mhm,
recently. I tried to live, throughout 2020. I wanted to stop. I heard this quote, and it's stop seeking dopamine and start hunting dopamine. So as the brain
mm,
gets dopamine from watching TV or playing video games, scrolling on TikTok as a child can be the most, in my opinion, it's one of the most
mm,
dangerous things you can do as a parent. I'm not a parent. I plan to be a parent, and I study other parents and listen to their opinions. So this is just coming off of my personal experiences from other parents. I want to make sure that my child is not at a young age scrolling TikTok, getting just spoon fed dopamine from people who will do anything for attention, thinking that that's what they should idolize to grow to be.
mhm,
Not every
mhm,
child should grow up to be an entertainer. Not every child. if they want to, and they go for it, and I'm happy for them. But it's not good that people at a young age now, when I ask them, it's my favorite exercise. I ask them, so who do you look up to? Who do you chase? After Matthew McConaughey's "Who Do I Chase" speech, I was blown away that all I started hearing was this TikTok person or jelly on YouTube. That's
Wow.
not their mom. They don't bring up their parents, a family friend, their uncle. If you ask somebody of our generation, they're going to usually bring up somebody who symbolizes greatness to them, whether that's military service, somebody who's a really, really successful entrepreneur who owns multiple businesses. It could be Joe Rogan because he listens to other people's opinions, and he believes in the
Mhm.
idea of free speech. It could be Duncan Trussell. There's so many people we can talk about who I idolize, who I look up to, not necessarily from, I wouldn't say idolize, but who I look to for new information. I don't like to chase dopamine. I like to hunt it. So when I have a question, I will
Mhm.
seek the answer. If I want to find entertainment, I will create entertainment. If I want
Mhm.
to have meaningful, powerful conversations, shit, I'm doing that right the fuck now. And I'm learning from you. I'm ingesting new information, new data, as a scientist would say. I'm collecting new data so I can make better um, experiments in the future with how I act. And I think it's so important that we hunt and seek new information instead of just watch whatever's on TV. All you're going to hear about for the next few years is if you go on the news is Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Joe Biden, Pelosi, husband attack, the balloon that got shut down, the Chinese
Mhm.
balloon got shut. You're just going to hear about the same stuff. It's
Mhm.
time to unplug. Time to unplug and find out what works for you. Do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want to be? Do you like looking at people who have attractive bodies where they've been working on them for years? Why don't you do that? Why don't you try it out? Go to the gym.
Mhm.
Just interact. Don't go to the club and celebrate nothing to celebrate. Make something to celebrate.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. I love that. Um, and yeah, yeah, like dopamine is uh it's like hardwired into it's engineered into us to what's the word I'm looking for? Like encourage positive behaviors. But we've hacked it to where, yeah, you could just like get on your phone and after 3 seconds, it's just like dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. And you're not doing anything that's kind of like worthy of that. Um, so yeah, I like everything you just said. Um, Kind of like earn the hit.
Uh-huh. Yes, because it can
Um,
be a slippery slope to have those those highs that aren't sustainable, right? When I go on Netflix,
yeah.
as soon as I turn it off, I'm tired because I had to go to bed and it's 11 o'clock and I work at 4 a.m. I'm hating myself because I just wasted this time doing
Mm-hmm.
something that wasn't lasting instead of spending time with my wife, hanging out with my dogs. My dogs, the more the more time I spend with my dogs, I get lasting dopamine. It's gonna last a while because they're with me.
Yeah,
That's
man.
something I'm gonna invest. I can get down with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's the only sort of like animal exploitation that I'm good with is like if you pet a dog for something like 30 seconds, you have like a 10-point drop in your blood pressure. So I'm like gonna call Henry over and be like, dude, I need to pet you for a little bit. Like
Oh yeah,
let's cuddle. And I'm
absolutely.
harvesting your good vibes, but um
I,
yeah,
I've
well
heard about other good types of good vibe harvesting, and I think they can be exceptionally beneficial to your brain as well.
for sure, man. Um One thing I wanted to add really quick to kind of what we were just talking about is something that I heard on I don't remember whose podcast, but it was like a psychologist and an expert on addiction, and she said we are all addicts, everyone, which might be like triggering for some people to hear, but when I heard her point, I was like, it's true, and it's like you were saying, like we're always chasing that dopamine hit, and the way she said it is like someone like will say, well, I'm not an alcoholic. I only drink one night a week, so I've got it under control. But then on another night of the week, maybe they're playing video games. And on another night of the week, they might watch porn. And on another night of the week, they might smoke weed. And another night, they spend 6 hours on TikTok or whatever. But it ends up being 7 nights a row where you're like doing this addictive behavior and getting this dopamine hit. And so you might not be like cripplingly addicted to one thing, but the behaviors represent like a greater addiction to what I would call distraction.
Mm.
Um, and anyway, that ties in with that whole like consciously incompetent thing is like, are we even aware of those things about ourselves, or are we kind of just like floating around, just letting life happen?
It,
So,
it definitely is a slippery slope. I try to
mhm.
practice dopamine cleanses. So there's days where I say I'm not watching. If I see a screen, I'm looking away unless it's working on scheduling my next
Oh,
podcast, or I'm gonna
nice.
I'm gonna avoid everything that has to do with music for a whole day. So tomorrow when I listen to it, I get super excited and have a good positive, in experience with it. Or oh god, it really sucks, candy. I'm gonna go a year without eating candy, and I've
Word.
I've done it, and thank God because dental bills suck. And it's important. It's just important to, I think, pull back from certain things. It's unhealthy as hell, and this is just my personal take on it. It's unhealthy as hell to spend every single day ingesting manufactured dopamine instead of creating in your
Hmm.
life. So creating these experiences, hunting it or foraging, depending on how you look at it, is super important. Is super important because
Yeah.
I hunt, and not everybody's a hunter gatherer. Some people are great at foraging parties. Other people are great warriors. There's so many different pathways we can take, depending on the
Hmm.
celestial alignments where we're born and stuff like that. But I definitely would say I try hunt. I hunt ferociously. I talked about this yesterday. There's How many times have you heard about someone get a DUI? Like it's a pretty normal thing,
A
right?
million. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
disgusting. Habitual unwavering intent is called an HUI. And I made it up in the middle of listening to hearing someone speak, and they brought up these three words, and they really spoke out to me. So I'm gonna practice getting HUIs and having an HUI all the time. So habitually unwavering intent. Everything I want to do, I want to pursue it with almost in it with a ferocious kind of attitude. But once I achieve that, I need to look to the next thing. What's next? I need to always be moving forward towards self betterment. And there's multiple ways to
Hmm.
do that. There's so many different ways. It could be something as simple as just listening to you talk, because I'm writing down things you're saying, and I'm going to do some of these exercises later, and practice self awareness
Sweet.
and emotional fitness as well.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. Um, yeah, I think self-awareness is the greatest gift we can give ourselves, but also like to other people in our life. And it's something like I'm so new to this. My journey only started like, I don't know, 2 years ago or whatever. So it's not like I'm an expert at all. I'm still trying to like learn more and recognize my own emotions and get better outlets for anger and stuff like that. Um, but even just when you touch the surface on these things and realize the magnitude, like the power that it has in your life, you don't have to be an expert. You have to just like get a taste and realize like, holy shit, I can change everything with this, like with just a little bit of effort in this direction. And that's kind of like that's becoming sort of my purpose, or at least like my um, the purpose I'm giving myself. It's what I want to do with my life is honor the gift and help other people to just have these um, similar experiences to what I've had. Um, and that's why I started. We're skipping a few chapters, but I down the road, after working with my coach for a while, I was um, kind of reintroduced to another teacher that I knew through a mutual friend, and he has a healing business in town. And he does a lot of physical work, like acupuncture and chiropractic, I think, and cupping and that kind of stuff. but he does a lot of like spiritual, emotional healing through like a therapeutic type approach. And I started working with him, um, like workshop style, to kind of like learn how to facilitate group healing. And my goal was to like start a men's group, and then do what I had talked about with you in our last episode about like the direction I want to take my business in, which is like a holistic kind of like healing approach. And so I started learning from him, and I did start my own men's group, and it was like just just trying to like show other men like the door to vulnerability. It's like the intro to the intro level of having that self-awareness and realizing your own emotions. And um, one of the things he says is that all emotion starts as sensation. So we don't necessarily have to have the emotional vocabulary, because anyone can say, oh, my, if I feel tight in my stomach, or it's like, when you're talking about that, what do you feel in your body? And it's like, oh man, my neck and my traps feel tight. I have a sinking sensation in my stomach, like my heart feels constricted. And then you can say, like, let's go with that, let's explore that, and let's just start talking about it. And they don't know that they're talking about, or maybe they do, but they're not saying the words like pain, anger, despair, shame, hopelessness. um, but it's registering in the body the same, whether they know it or not. And it's like, okay, well, um, let's talk about why you're feeling that way. And someone that walks in sort of like walled off might have like a grand slam and have this big cathartic experience and cry, and you know realize something. Like so many times in my own personal experience, like going to men's group and stuff, is I think I have a handle on what's causing me to feel a certain way. Like I think A is making me feel this way, and it turns out it's actually B, C, and D. And I had to like go through the fucking trenches to realize that. um so anyway, I'm kind of off on a tangent right now, but
I think
um
tangents are important. I want to touch on that
yeah.
100% because peer-to-peer support groups is something that is what I find more comfortable and works better for me. I don't gain solace from being told by a therapist or a psychologist, hey, you might be kind of really, really messed up for a long time because your dad died while you were deployed. You're gonna have some weird you're gonna probably gonna have some weird things to unpack there. You're gonna have you and him had bad terms, so you're gonna have a weird relationship to kind of unpack. You're gonna have difficulty finding the positive in it because you're going to remember the bad parts, because one violent incident with a parent can accentuate so many other ones and bring them out of the woodwork. So you kind of push down because you wanted to see them as this hero, the savior, the father you always wanted. And it sucks to be disappointed. So you're gonna just focus on the bad parts. You might be kind of jacked up for a while, Eddie. I didn't like hearing that. um I when my friends who have lost parents when they deployed said, hey man, uh you know, this was really tough for me when I went through it. How are you doing? That kind of, that opens that door, as you kind of said. It makes me kind of want to take a
Mm,
couple steps in the
yeah.
door. And I say, it really sucked. I feel like my wife was my girlfriend at the time, but my wife was the one who was holding stuff down back home, like in the hospital, holding his hand, trying to make things work when I was stuck on
Oh,
an aircraft carrier somewhere. So I'm going to have a little bit of emotional disconnection with the situation. It might take me longer to mend, to cope, to find healing, find any healing, find any positivity in the situation. And there's going to always be the guilt, unresolved issues, but also losing a parent while you're deployed, it can be kind of weird. And for a lot of reasons, I think I don't even know if weird is the right word. I'm just kind of tiptoeing through how I feel, I think, right now. But I can honestly say that peer-to-peer support groups have helped me in ways I could never imagine. I'm standing next to a Navy SEAL.
sure.
I have a guy who was in the Air Force doing honor guard duty, a couple guys in the Army or infantry. If you listen to this, fuck off. The guys in the Army infantry who loved and they're just super uh hilarious and remind me of the funny parts of life. we don't always have to be sad. Sitting in a room with people who might have had similar experiences, and them just saying, it sucks to always feel tough. I had a bad day, and this is why. It allows me to feel like I'm going to say it, a safe place to kind of take those steps towards the door. And eventually I
Yeah.
twisted the doorknob and I started talking about things that hurt me. I started talking about my traumatic experiences that I've had in life, and the lessons I've learned
Mm-hmm.
from them. And you would be surprised how many aha moments is what they're usually referred to in the group, but how many
Mm-hmm.
um, in moments of enlightenment and full circle connections and solace, healing,
Oh
moments of
yeah.
self-realization, self-awareness, moments of breaking through depression and getting into uh, just walking up a hill. Those moments are so powerful, and they can happen when we take off these things that are truly toxic masculinity, which is saying, I need to be tough. I
Oh
need to be
yeah.
strong. You don't need to be anything but who you are. And that's where I think that I've learned the most
Yeah.
from support groups. I think support groups are amazing. And I think you are definitely in the right path with helping people, because a clinical psychiatrist who's getting paid to tell me that there's something wrong with me, and might have the idea that a patient cured is a customer lost. It doesn't kind of vibe well with me. It just doesn't kind of vibe well with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. There's two really, really incredible benefits from um I haven't heard that term before, peer-to-peer support group. I love that. I would just call it like group healing or whatever, but two really incredible, maybe unintended like effects from that. And the first is anytime you sit a group of people down and start doing shadow work or like talking about, your fears, your pains, your vulnerabilities, there's going to be a connection that you have with every single person and that they all have with each other. Themes tend to honestly start to unveil themselves. As one person shares, someone else will say, yeah, actually, I can relate to that and I can add to it. And there's like this thread that connects everybody. And so you realize this interconnectedness that you have with everyone. And then the second benefit is in the witnessing. So many people have an unmet need to feel seen and to feel heard. And when you can just prostrate yourself in front of a group of people, in a setting like this, where you're all there for healing, you are going to be heard and you're going to be seen, and you're like most vulnerable, which I would consider like your highest, most authentic version of yourself. And there's no deeper way to be seen and heard. And um, I've done uh, a lot of work with that teacher I was talking about. His name's Luke. Um, in like a learning capacity, but also in a healing capacity. I don't know why I can't say that word. And it's been I've had to sort of relearn how to cry. I it That was one of the things that led me to my first coach, Islin. Um, was like I can't cry. Like I can feel these emotions that need to come out, and I can't get them out. It was so aggravating, just like straight to rage, like always. And like there's stuff that I can think about that makes me sad, and I feel it starting to surface, and I'm like, here it comes, and then it just like disappears. It was horrible. And and I actually had like two experiences, well, multiple experiences now, but two that kind of like really come to the surface. And one was with Aislinn, where I was like telling her about something that was painful for me. I don't remember what it is anymore. Um, and I was like, I feel kind of sad about this. And she had just looked at me and was like, yeah, like you were really hurt. And she was so understanding and like maternal that it just like blew this door off the hinges. And then I started crying and was like, I had no idea how painful and how hurt it was until someone saw that for me and in me. And it was like, holy shit, you're right. It was like devastating. And I had this amazing emotional release. And then basically the same thing happened in a group setting with Luke, where like the strength of the people, or sorry, the presence of the people around me gave me strength to like have that emotional release, because it was like this safe container, and there was like this collective energy, and just something about that, about the witnessing, um just like allows for incredible release. Like it gives you the strength, I suppose, to like allow yourself to let those things out. um and man, that's some gangster shit.
It definitely is, man. I couldn't have said it better. That is some gangster shit. Having the ability to express yourself is something that is lost in humanity. We get told every single day you need to be this certain box, or you need to identify as this certain thing, or you have to act this way because of your skin color, or you're not supposed
Hmm.
to act like this if you love that person of this all these weird boxes that society loves to stick by because they're comfortable. They're really comfortable
Hmm.
in these boxes. It would be great if I could just sit here and say, yeah, I'm just a half black uh guy who loves his wife, America, guns, bacon, and I drive a truck, and some if some douchebag online puts me in a box because of um the things that I do in my life, that I it's no secret that I love shoot guns. It's very therapeutic for me, having one thing to focus on and just hitting a target with metal, and then going to a plastic bag and
Hmm.
cleaning up nature. That fits well with me. I love cleaning up nature. It's my thing. I picked up a dead end sign
Yeah.
that was out there. I got a dead end sign hanging up at my bar right now because I picked up a dead end sign last time I was out there. There's so much that can be.
Sweet.
I don't like being put in boxes. I don't like other people doing it. I try not to put others in boxes. I've been more self-aware. There's that word again, or that phrase again.
Hmm.
Try to be more self-aware about
Hmm.
it. I don't think we can ever get to a point of being better as a human race unless we become self-aware. Not self-conscious, because that's not good. That's unhealthy. Not weak, but it's unhealthy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Self-awareness is positive. Ingesting the right stuff is positive, and peer-to-peer support groups have changed my life. I joined a local chapter called of MVP, Merging Veterans and Players. It's where they take former pro athletes and former military personnel and mix them together,
Oh.
because there's this common entity that is usually residing. I would say about 8 times out of 10. I'm trying not to put people in boxes, but there's usually some issues contributing. Identity issues, knowing who you are, what's your purpose. What was
Mm.
I worked so hard at this and now it's gone. How do I fill this void? And the issue is usually the second one, camaraderie, having your squad, your platoon, your unit, your gym, your fitness team, your bodybuilding coach and his crew.
Hmm.
Um, Other times it can be losing friends, losing family over the years, looking for a sense of family. You find it in the military, and now, bam, you have that. And you're also forcing each other to talk about how they feel just by expressing how you feel in a positive way after
Hmm.
you work out for 30 minutes. So that dopamine, the natural dopamine, gets flowing, the ones you,
Yes.
and then you talk about your feelings. So it is very similar to what you want to do with doing an
That's that.
activity and
Yeah,
then
that's
talking about it, right? I think it's a bulletproof idea.
exactly what I want to do.
I would love for
Yeah.
you to watch the movie Merging Veterans and Players. It's like $3.99 on Amazon or whatever, and I got to
Awesome.
watch it with the Seahawks up here, um, and with their general manager and a bunch of other people. And wow, was it emotional? Again, it's Merging Veterans and Players. It's all over the internet. It's on Showtime, I think, as well, as of recently. But that is the how the group pretty much started. It's a story. They didn't want to use any vet stories all the way through because it can be very, very personal, especially along the lines of suicidal ideation, struggles with mental health and stuff like that. But I
Sure.
challenge everybody, you and everybody listening, to watch that movie and then talk about it with somebody. Talk about it with me. Talk about it with the world on Facebook, because that is exactly what you're talking about doing. And it's a great
Hmm.
idea. We do it all the time by going to bars, talking about where if we drink too much at a bar and you're talking with somebody and you say, "Oh man, I can't believe I can't believe this happened to me." And then someone said, "I had a similar experience." We share experiences and stories. And the Native
Yeah.
Americans have been
Hmm.
doing this for years, sharing stories, coming together and sharing stories, sharing culture. We can create culture by healing. I really think we can.
Hmm. Man, that's cool. Yeah, the more you shine your light, the more it gives others permission to do the same.
Yep, 100%.
Mhm. Um, okay, so I guess if we talk about Native Americans doing stuff for years, that's a great segue to bring me to like again another chapter in my own healing, which is plant medicine.
Oh
Um,
yes.
yeah, I'm just such a big fan. I've had tremendous experience with that, and also I want to tie in like shadow work at the same time, which is um, my favorite film trilogy ever is The Matrix, and in the first Matrix, when he meets with the Oracle, and she points to that sign above her door, and it's in Latin, and it says "Know thyself." Um, that's kind of what shadow work is all about, is um, accepting these parts of you, or just acknowledging these parts of you that we keep in the shadow, or like, we keep them in the dark, tucked away with the door shut. It's the shoebox in the closet, man. um, like that you talked about earlier. It's all the unacknowledged like pain and emotion that we just stuff deep down inside. That's the shadow. And the dark thoughts or desires that we have, they only gain power when you refuse to acknowledge them. And once you bring them to the light, or bring the light to them, or whatever, it takes the power away. And that's sort of the key component to the men's group that I host, or facilitate, or whatever term you want to use, is like, let's acknowledge the shadow and do shadow work. But um, one of my favorite ways to go about that is with plant medicine. I am just a huge fan of psilocybin. It just has always given me everything that I've asked for. And sometimes it's like not the fucking path that I want to take to get there, but it's the path that I need to take. Um,
Hmm.
and um, so I guess you had said something earlier, and I'm trying to remember what it was. Um, but I was going to relate it to people being like uh, scared of psychedelics. And it's because maybe of like what you might encounter
Hmm.
when you're in that space. But the only thing that you're going to encounter is what's inside your mind.
Oh yes,
It's you.
absolutely. Usually when
And
someone
so
has
if
a
you
bad
have,
experiences, they like took too much, they take way too much, and they're in a bad headspace. They're in a bad environment. They feel unsafe in the environment where they're taking it. And they usually they don't take good food before. And I don't know if anybody, has too much understanding of what psilocybin is, but usually certain substances don't agree well with your stomach. And so I can personally say that the experiences I've had with psilocybin have been great, except for one, and it was because I was in a bad environment and I took too much. I didn't pay attention to what I ate that day, and I was just I was in a funk. If you're in a funk, something that's going to enhance your mind is going to put you in a bigger funk. Don't be in a funk.
don't be in a fuck. Well, yeah, at least the way I see it is that the medicine is going to show you what you need to see,
Mm.
no matter what. No matter, and it doesn't care if you ate all the right food, if you're in the right setting. It doesn't care. It's going to show you, and it's up to the user to be in the right place for it. But um, you know, my sort of opinion on this is that um, the only the only time that there's anything to be afraid of is if you have some shit that's unacknowledged inside you, that you like are that you're stuffing down into the shadow, and that you're not willing to bring to the light, because the medicine's going to bring that shit to the light, and if you're not ready to deal with it, it's going to be traumatic. And it's and or maybe not even traumatic, it's just going to be difficult. And that, I think, is when people are like, oh, I had a really bad trip. It's like, well, it was trying to show you something and you weren't ready to see it. And that's why I worked with my coach for 12 weeks before ever involving psilocybin, because I needed to be aware enough to interpret the data that I was receiving. And I'll be honest, I've done plenty of substances prior to that, and I had done mushrooms before, but it was like, just I'm just doing it to do it. Like, let's have fun and see what happens. But taking that intent into the into it, like treating it as something sacred, which it is. um Man, that changed everything. And it will, I believe it has a consciousness. And it will show you what you need to see, and it will communicate with you in a variety of different ways. And on my first ceremony, I saw this memory that I um so when I was like in sixth grade or something, I was playing tag with my friends at recess. I was like running as fast as I could, and I turned around to see like how far the kid was behind me that was trying to catch me. And when I faced forward again, I ran into this horizontal bar, and I hit it so hard that I did a complete backflip and was like bleeding out of my face. And this kid, like one of the teachers, was like, "Oh my God, so and so helped Zachary back to the up to the building to the nurse's office." And there's like this flight of stairs, and I like started to lose consciousness on the stairs, and he had to like grab me and stop me from falling down. And so my face was fucked up, and I was super hurt. And it was a weekday, and it was during the day, and so the nurse was calling my parents at home, and obviously no one's home. And I just was like, it hurt, it sucked. I just wanted to be like nurtured and cared for and stuff. And when I finally did get home, um, my mom and stepdad, they they wanted to just try and, I don't know, like make light of it a little bit, and maybe not like baby me or whatever, but they started making these Rocky jokes and going, "Yo, Adrian," which, like, is pretty funny. I got it, like, that's funny. It's
Not in the
savage.
moment though.
Yeah, so, and I had talked to her about that a couple of times, I think, before this ceremony, and just for the sake of saying that hurt my feelings, I wish you wouldn't have done that. So I'm in the middle of the psilocybin ceremony, and I'm reliving this experience. Like, what is going on? And I called my mom about it either that day or the next day, and told her, and she's like, "Yeah, we've talked about this before, and I've told you that I'm sorry." And like, it's sort of the, like, how many times is this going to come up, and we're going to have the same conversation? And it took me a few days before I realized what it was telling me is that this was a pivotal moment in me learning fear of vulnerability,
Hmm.
because it was in that moment where I so desperately wanted to be nurtured, and I was so vulnerable. I was like in pain, and my face was all fucked up, and I looked like an idiot. And I was met with sort of with humor, but in a way to feel shame. I felt shame in that moment, and that taught me that vulnerability equals shame.
Mm.
And it was so huge for me to realize that, because that it took the power away from the memory, and understanding, um that changed everything. And then I was able to have that conversation and say, this is why it's so important that I've been reliving this memory. um and it just kind of like allowed me to map a few things out in my life. And the more you can understand your trauma, like, um the more you can interrupt those patterns in the future and change and become, unconsciously competent. So, like, you just never know. Sometimes it's a feeling in your body, sometimes it's a memory that you relive, and sometimes, like, I swear that it's like communicating with a person that's in the room. Like, it's wild, how you can receive those messages. And I've been able to like have conversations with my own critic, with my inner child. Like, it's magical. It's something that's like, um, extremely sacred, and deserves a lot more respect than we give it as a society. And that's changing right now, but for the most part, it's been like, drugs are bad, they should be shunned. Let's all drink alcohol and just forget our problems. And
Sounds like someone's making money off those words.
yeah, man. Oh, it gets me so fired up, um, that we have this amazing tool and gift. There's so many of them. There's so many plant medicines that all have so many incredible benefits. And it's like you're a fucking loser hippie and a criminal if you use those things. But of course, simultaneously, like we've got Adderall and Ritalin and alcohol and caffeine and sugar that are just like rampant and
Shoved down everyone's
super
throats,
legal.
especially kids.
Yeah. Yes. What the fuck? Whew.
Yeah, I can't do it. It just blows my mind that we have something that is almost equates to synthetic meth, and it's given to children to deal with rambunctious attitudes, and young men who need to be young minds need to be nurtured in different ways.
Mhm.
Obviously, that's something that I think everybody can agree with. I think it's something that we should look to as a society, is not forcing drug down a young person's throat when they're spending all day in a sedative lifestyle, TV, video games, phones, instead
Mm.
of, okay, let's you're feeling a little spun up. Why don't you go jump on a trampoline? Why don't you let's go for a let's walk the dog, let's go for a jog. These practices I think are essential, especially when it comes to the youth. It really is. We really need to be better as a society in nurturing um the self-awareness that comes with having children. Your children are going to need to have their brains
Mhm.
working. Your children are going to have their bodies working. It's not good that we have child obesity in America. It's an atrocity. It's terrifying that we allow. If the number one killer in America is cardiovascular disease, you would think that we as a society would work towards more exercise, more activities, instead of just giving a kid a tablet and saying, "Hey, go to town, have fun. I'm gonna go play video games or drink myself to death or just ignore the world on Netflix while you do the same thing." It's not
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
And we
totally.
wonder why kids
I
are
love
spun
that
up.
term, sedative lifestyle.
Yes. And then we say,
Yeah.
why are these kids so rammed?
Wow.
Why is this young man? He must have ADHD. Let's drug him. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's not to, it's not to take the power away from pharmaceutical intervention, because I think
A
there's
hundred percent. 100%.
absolutely benefit and there's a time and a place and a requirement, but it's the rampant over prescription of those things for, yeah, maybe a child that has an active imagination, or who's in a class with a teacher that can't hold his or her attention because they're fucking boring. um that's not You don't need to medicate a child because the teacher is boring. The teacher needs to maybe learn some different techniques.
Hmm.
um so
I definitely think
yeah,
it can be done. It can be done. Old dogs can learn new tricks.
yeah, and it's just I think the frustrating part that we're both talking about is just the hypocrisy in that.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, hold on, can we take a break for a second?
Yeah, let's take a pause. So, what are some healthy practices that you try to do regularly to make sure that you are, you know, I don't know, on your A game is the best way I could say it. I think emotional fitness takes a lot longer to work on than physical fitness, and the journey never really ends. What are some things or uh
No.
some practices that you practice?
Well, there's the basics I think that everyone has heard, which is like journaling, meditation, particularly around like mindfulness, and those things. I've had this experience a bajillion different times, and I'll have it again a bajillion more times, where I know something logically, like journaling is good, and then I'll experience something viscerally where I am journaling and have a visceral emotional release, and I'm like, holy shit, that's what journaling is good means. Like, I get it now. And I've had that experience with all kinds of stuff, usually cliche stuff, where I'm like, when I try to explain the experience to someone else, they're like, yeah, I know journaling is good. And I'm like, no, but you don't understand. Like, you have to feel it for yourself to really understand the power. Um, so anyway, um, those are a couple of like basic things. And like I had said before, I have a couple of alarms that go off on my phone, and they say a 3BJ, which means where you just take 3 breaths with a 3-second inhale and exhale. And it's just kind of like an instant like break from whatever you're doing. Um, and it also reminds me what my 3 core values are. And it's just that reminder to like, all right, be in alignment so that I'm not creating suffering in myself. And then I've um, just discovered, a handful of people that have been, like social media people or like doctors or whatever that have been really helpful in um, like learning new information and also creating content that's like worthy of consumption. So one of my favorites is the holistic psychologist on Instagram. Um, it's actually a couple of gals, and they throw like every day they throw out multiple posts, and it's just such good content. It's like they'll talk about what attachment styles people have and what that means for you and how to work through it and find your way into secure attachment. So I had learned that I'm like uh, very avoidant. That's the whole like holding people at arm's length. Um, and there's like anxious and disorganized and all these different attachment styles. So they help you to learn what that is and how to move through it and find yourself in a place of secure attachment with your partner or with your friends. Um, and they talk about, um, how just unlimited stuff, like how your parents, their relationship can affect your future relationships and how the kinds of like typical childhood trauma and stuff like that. So holistic psychologist has been incredible. And there's sort of a more bite-sized, less deep version but of this guy named Case Kenny. He's also it's not like deep psychological stuff. It's just like really feel good um content, sort of like empowering stuff. And then Brene Brown for sure. She oh god, sorry about
I
that.
took a dive. I
All
took
these
a dive.
people
I took a dive. Stage left. It is what it is.
that's right. All these people have multiple uh like media, I don't know, like ways that they release content. So there's podcasts, there's the holistic psychologist, they have a podcast and their Instagram and Facebook, and they also wrote a book called How to Do the Work.
Mm.
um, and then Brene Brown, she has a ton of books. She wrote that book I was talking about earlier, Atlas of the Heart, which is so awesome because it really, all it does is give you the vocabulary and help teach you about not just like basic emotions, but things like Schadenfreude, which is like the pleasure that you feel in watching someone else's failure. Like some of those like weird, and like Freudenfreude, which is the pleasure you feel when you see someone else's success.
That's me.
Um,
That's me right there.
yeah, and that's what we should all be striving to be all the time, is like building each other up,
Mm.
not hoping for negativity. But um, that book, just gives you the foundation to move forward, I think. Um, so yeah, I guess those are just a handful of resources and practices. But also is um, kind of where I'm at in my journey right now, is like being of service,
Mm.
honoring the gift that you've or gifts that you've been given, and helping others to to access those same gifts, and honoring like my my one of my major goals moving forward is honoring my teachers um, in the things that they've shown me and taught me. Because if I were to just take that and selfishly hoard it, like that's the end of the journey. Um, but if I treat it like a like a multi-level marketing business, I teach 3 people and they teach 3 people and they teach 3 people, then my teacher's gift has impacted hundreds of people, like impacted the world. The more that I can honor them, um, or rather, the more I can share these things with others, the more I can honor them. And yeah.
I love that, man. I love that. I think it's so important, like I talked about earlier, ingesting new positive information, putting up those walls in that house of emotional and mental fitness. Um, one of the things I like to do, practice daily, is listening to other people's experiences, because as you listen to others' experiences, you can help and better, you can help yourself better understand your own. Sharing information is a key contributor for me personally. And that's where I
Mhm.
take that's where I'm kind of selfish in this with this podcast thing, because I'm taking all the information that's everybody. I take notes every time. I'm always listening to the way you say certain words and how it personally has affected you. When you bring up a certain word, there's so much meaning behind it because we use the same word so many times. Amazing is a word I use often. Absolutely means black and white, um, like a black and white answer or a black and white
Mhm.
affirmation for me. So I'll use. I don't like dealing in absolution ever. I hate thinking that we should be in a box where it's a yes or no question or answer, because that's not everybody's experience. But definitely practicing what I preach when I say the word absolutely. I mean totally. It's 100%. I agree
Mhm.
with you without a single doubt. I think that's something I try to just get across when it's bulletproof and when it's not. So I try to practice a bunch of different things. And my favorite part about the things that you shared today has definitely been one of the core values, the uncompetent conscious, being
Mhm.
conscientious of how incompetent or competent you are, and
Mhm.
how we can work every
Totally.
day towards it. What is just one thing you would say to anybody who's on the fence of being able to walk into a peer-to-peer support group, or if they're down there near you and they say, oh, I'm going to check out Zach and see
Mm.
what he's got going on. What is one thing you would say to somebody on the edge of that's still okay with saying, I'm okay, I don't need help, but they're having fits of rage, they're pissed off at the world, they're unhappy, they're generally sad on the inside?
Mhm. Mm. Um, I think the first thing I would want to do is like remove shame. We are absolutely, as a culture, everybody, men and women, but I think particularly men, we're taught that emotion is bad. It's like anything that you feel, sometimes even joy. If you're feeling too much joy, it's like put a lid on it. Like quit being loud and quit letting your happiness be loud. Um, and I would say like remove the shame around having emotions because that's exactly what it means to be a human being. And if you can not feel ashamed of being angry or scared or depressed or whatever, that is sort of that gives you the permission to sort of reach out. And it doesn't even have to be for help. You can treat it like a checkup, like a maintenance thing, or it can also be about what you have to offer others. If you feel like you're totally fine, but you want to still check out like a support group or a shadow work group or whatever, you can help others just by being there, just by offering your ability to witness. Um, and we all have something that's valuable. We all have our own individual experiences that someone can relate with and learn from and grow from. And that goes both ways, man. It's a two-way street. So I would say, like everyone has to be ready, but I guess in this situation, the person's on the fence. So I would say take a leap, like just try it one time. I'm willing to bet it's going to be a positive experience. Um, and if it's not, what have you lost?
Well, they tried to
Mm.
they try to be at one with their feelings is the only thing I think they would lose, and that's never a bad thing. So I think that throwing caution to the wind and taking the step in the right direction towards being one with yourself is a key component of being better ever. You can't
Yeah.
look to seek self improvement and not try to work on yourself. You can't seek to be happy in a relationship and not be happy with who you are. You can't be happy with what other people look like and you're not happy with what you look like in the mirror, you should always work on
Yeah.
yourself, and it's a positive thing to do that. And you'll thank yourself later when you're looking back at the progress you made, saying, "Wow, that doesn't hurt me anymore. I've accepted that. This is what it
Yeah.
is. You can't change it, but I can do better in the future." And
Yeah.
admonishing that guilt is super important.
Yeah. One of the really cool things that I learned is that, I said earlier, nothing is linear, and that includes life itself and the lessons that you're going to learn. It's not a straight line, it's a spiral. And at one point in that spiral, I'm doing a lot of stuff with my hands, but hopefully you can, if you're listening to this, you can figure it out. There's a point on that spiral where something happened and you need to learn a lesson about that. Maybe it's the suicide of a friend. Maybe it's a divorce of your parents. Maybe it's, X thing that made you feel shame. As you complete that spiral throughout your life, you're going to meet that point time and time again. And if you have not accepted it and learned from it, that lesson is just going to keep repeating. And you're just like a record player, basically, right? So you're going to encounter that over and over again. And it's just going to cause just as much havoc and mayhem if you, um, like every time, if you're unwilling to learn from it. But if you can accept it, learn the lesson, um, and like move forward from it, then the next time you encounter it, it's just going to be like, oh yeah, like just what you were saying, that happened. I'm at peace with it. I no longer feel this toxic shame because I learned, I've grown, um, and it no longer has power over you.
Mm, I know that's right. I know that is right. Well, I appreciate everything that you were able to bring to light. I would say bring to light, because in information, when we keep it to ourselves, it kind of sits there in the dark parts of our mind. When we share it with others and we let our light shine, it definitely reminds other people of the light that they have within themselves. There's so many important things that you said. I would say another one of my favorite is how your approach to determining your self-worth by working on yourself. And you kind of removed yourself from the self-worth part. You just talked about what am I working on, in is how you kind of got it across to me. And I really admire that, because we should always seek to be better. And if you're not looking inward, looking outward at your, no, they're not going to change. The Khloe Kardashian is still gonna keep doing it. Okay, it ain't stopping anything. But working on yourself, there's so much beautiful benefit. And wow, to love
Mhm.
yourself a little bit more than yesterday, that is one of life's greatest gifts.
Yeah, yeah, man. Um,
So,
and yeah, if I could just leave like a sort of a parting message, um, like we all have masculine and feminine energy, and either one of those things can be toxic. You can even be toxically positive, you know. If someone's trying to vent to you about something and you're the person that goes, oh well, let's look at the bright side of the silver lining or whatever, and that person just needs someone to hold space so that they can express an emotion that becomes toxic positivity. So masculinity is not toxic, femininity is not toxic. It's the suppression of any one of those things, um, that becomes toxic, or in the expression of it, it denies someone else the ability to express themselves. That's what's toxic. And man, um, if you can learn to love yourself and all the parts of yourself, you can unlock the door to loving everyone else
mhm.
and giving them the permission to love you and to love themselves. It's just like this incredible domino effect, or avalanche rather. It picks up momentum, and I think we're at just an incredible point right now where we have all this kinetic energy, all this potential. Like we've connected the entire world through the internet and social media, and ideas can gain huge traction and power. And um, if we use this opportunity to start lifting each other up, and um, not no longer deny but accept the feminine and the masculine, we can make big waves, man.
Yes, I definitely do believe we can. Well, brother, I thank you so much for your time today, your insight, your experiences. The I can definitely tell that you have so much power and light to provide to the universe, and I think that you're doing a great job with it. And I can recognize that from all the way up here in Seattle. So thank you so much for doing that, man. I think it's important to have a tremendous effect on others. The most beautiful currency that we will ever occur or ever occur in and just stack up in our bank account in life is the effect we have on other people, and having a
Hmm.
positive effect is so much worth it, more worth it than having a negative one, man. So I really admire that about you. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a beautiful week this week, and I hope everything goes smooth. And thank you so much for, more than anything, just being open and honest. It's something I want to touch on before we kind of shut down for the day, is that how many times have you heard, oh, that person just being soft, that person's being weak. A lot of
Hmm.
that is a disgusting thing to do, and I've been guilty of saying that in my because of that's what I was told how you live. No one
Hmm.
has the same experiences. Whether it's a combat vet, whether it's somebody who's been spoon fed in a house over in Bellevue and never experienced being told no, no matter what it is, we all have different experiences. What is hard for somebody else might not be hard for you, or what's easy for you might be terrifying to somebody else.
Hmm.
I find spiders terrifying. Other people are like, oh, bring it on, whatever. I'm not scared of gunfire. You're gonna shoot a gun right behind me. I probably won't. I'll just look
Mm.
around and like, oh, it's over there. It's nice. I don't care. But to other people, it is a traumatic, horrible thing that reminds them of losing their best friend. We all have different
Yeah.
things that are terrifying to us, but I think it's bad to compare experiences. And I wanted to thank you for being open and sharing yours, because much more of that needs to happen in order for us to move forward as a society.
Yeah, I agree with you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity, man. And I see all the same things in you. You're clearly passionate about helping others and um, shining your own light. And I think you're making big waves too. And I appreciate you, and I love you.
Thank you. I love you too, my brother. I hope you have a beautiful day. Hug your dog for me, because I'm about to go upstairs to hug mine. All right, man. Take it easy.
Sounds good. Peace.